Hello, I'm Robert. Welcome to my channel. And it's really excellent news, vaccine news now, that Pfizer, it's with the B.1.1.7 variant, is stopping 97% of them. That means if you started off with 100 people that would normally be infected, say at a super spreader event, and suppose without a vaccine 100 would get infected, then this means only 3 would show symptoms and only 6 would get infected at all. So this is very, very effective. And we're also, the other good news is that we're getting, we're no longer having the problems with vaccine hesitancy, certainly not in the United Kingdom. I think it's still continuing in some other countries. But it's really, this is not surprising, it's normal that as the vaccine rolls out, then people become less hesitant and they get this good news and they realise it is actually working. And then we've got the people, like here for instance is Patrick Steward, so fans of Star Trek, he is the actor who plays Captain Picard. He's also well respected as a person himself, someone of integrity himself. And here is Dolly Parton, again a very respected country singer in the United States, and she actually funded Moderna. She gave, I don't mean she funded it totally, but she was one of the people who gave funding for the Moderna vaccine, and here she is receiving the vaccine that she helped fund. So that maybe helps counteract some of these people who say, oh, it was Bill Gates who funded the vaccine. For some reason he gets a bad press, but people don't have the same view about Dolly Parton, that she would be involved in some conspiracy theory to kill everyone, which is ridiculous. Bill Gates isn't either. So hopefully that helps people to understand they actually are safe vaccines. They don't have a microchip in them. They are actually safe and effective. And there she is, one of the sponsors, being vaccinated. Another example is Ian. He's the actor who played Gandalf in The Lord of the Rings. And then here's David Attenborough. He's been vaccinated. And all the living presidents, former presidents, I think, have been vaccinated in the United States. And so this gradually gets people turning around. And I think, yes. Anyway, so I think we're going to see this. I think we're going to see this disease come under control much faster than people are expecting. The other good news is, I've been expecting. The other good news is that it's actually, if you look at it's actually been vaccinating worldwide. So if I just come out of it, this is looking at sadly it's very uneven. So I was just looking at Iran, and there are only 7 doses so far in Iran. That's not very much. 7 doses per 1,000. And whereas if you compare it with Israel, which had 100 doses per 1,000, 100 doses per 100. And so 1,000 per 1,000. Doesn't mean 100 people. That doesn't mean everyone's been vaccinated. About half of them, a bit over half, have been vaccinated, and some with the second dose. So that seem like very unfair. And why is it so uneven? And then if you go and look at Africa, it's even worse. That many African countries haven't been vaccinated yet. I was just looking at, and then some of them. Yeah, sorry, this takes a little bit of manoeuvring. Just a second. So if you look at, for instance, Nigeria's only had 80 total doses. A couple of countries have had really quite high numbers comparatively. That's had 660 doses. Senegal has actually had 52,000, and that's 0.31, so 31.3 per 1,000 it's had. That's quite a high number for the sub-Saharan Africa. So the Angola, it's only had one dose so far. So obviously it's only just got there. So there are two ways of looking at this. So one way of looking at it is to say, look how unfair that is. I only wish I could have given my dose to someone in Africa, because I got vaccinated a few weeks ago, and I've got practically zero risk, really, because I'm so careful, even though I'm elderly, and I've got a few percent chance of a few percent chance of dying without the vaccine, but I'm so careful that I practically zero risk. And but we can't do that. Sadly, there isn't any way to give your dose to someone in Africa if you're in the United Kingdom. But these elderly 90-year-olds, there's elderly doctors. They've got. It's so sad. In Africa, then they have much less by the way of doctors per population than you have, for instance, in the United States or United Kingdom. And some of their doctors are still dying. Some have died quite recently of COVID, just because they weren't vaccinated. And yet here am I in the United Kingdom and I've been vaccinated. It doesn't make sense that frontline health workers, leading doctors, the experts in Africa who are at the front line, who know they're endangered and they just don't have vaccines because the vaccines haven't got to their country yet. That is not right. So that in that sense it is very unfair. And yet but yet on the other side, if you look at the positive, we have never had a vaccine go out so fast to so many countries. Never. It's just never. Nothing even remotely like this has happened before. So in that sense it's very positive. And even though we're not vaccinating everyone in the same weeks or the same month around the world, we will vaccinating. We've got enough vaccines for more than half the world population actually already, and they're ramping up on vaccination. And the wealthier countries, India is one of the countries that's actually being quite altruistic. It is giving half of its doses to other neighbouring countries, even though it's only got 1.74. It's still giving away half of the doses that it gives the vaccinations to neighbouring countries. And that's not counting the ones that's it's like its own doses. For instance, to Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, and countries like that, the neighbouring countries. And I think that the United Kingdom, we certainly should be doing that now. I think we should give half our doses away at least, myself. And it's better for our country too, to keep it down. The rest of the world, stop the variants arising. But anyway, but the good thing is that the whole world is being vaccinated. We're going to have more than a fifth, in fact more than a quarter of the world, of the entire world population should be offered the vaccine by the end of 2021. And then if you take account that the wealthy countries have over-ordered, they got far too many doses, and if you take account of those doses and that they're going to give them to the rest of the world, at least after they've finished vaccinating their populations, and some of them before they finish, then we should vaccinate more than half the world population in 2021, and then we'll have an even higher, much higher vaccine generation capacity in 2022, and then we also have the situation where they're ramping up on capacity very quickly right now. And for instance, and then they're looking at ways of transferring the technology and the know-how to other countries, because it's really being rather restricted. AstraZeneca is one of the few vaccine companies to actually license it very broadly and to tell other countries how to do it. And others are being a little bit sluggish at that. And because there's so many factories around the world, so many companies around the world that could be involved in making the vaccines. Some in making the vaccines, some just in filling, and they just make the syringe, get the syringes and fill them with the vaccine. But there's a shortage of that too. And so there are plenty of companies around the world that can do that. So we should see the vaccines going up and up. But then the other positive thing that few people, I can't see anyone mentioning this. So as far as I know, this is new to me, novel to me. I don't see anyone else saying this. I don't know why not. So this is a bit about plugging holes, using vaccines to plug holes. So do bear in mind, this is just me, so maybe I've got something wrong. Tell me if I've made a mistake. But I don't see how it's not right. And if you know a paper about this, do tell me. But or someone saying this in a journalist article or something. Anyway, this is that the countries are thinking, and even COVAX, the United States, United Kingdom, they're all thinking in terms that the way we've got to end this is to find a way to vaccinate everyone. So they don't seem to have the idea that it could end before we vaccinated everyone. But now if we look at that 94% effective stopping transmission, maybe they will start thinking about it like that now that we've got such good vaccine results. But we could think about this even with a 50% effective vaccine. So the way to think about this is, think about the United Kingdom last summer. Suppose we had a time machine and we could put, say, 300,000 Pfizer vaccines into the time machine, along with the instructions saying this has been proven to be safe and effective. You can use it to vaccinate, and they believe us. Then they could vaccinate everyone in the city of Leicester, everyone in a meatpacking factory, and then another couple of small places. And that would be everyone with COVID in the United Kingdom. It was eradicated from London. It was eradicated from the entire United Kingdom. There was just a big hotspot in the city of Leicester. So we could have reached zero COVID last summer. And it's not necessary. I think this is going to happen again this summer. United States never quite got to that point. But if we now look at what's happening here, so if we look at the United States last summer, this is last summer. So these are the cases starting from. I haven't. So that's where it is now, and that's where it was. It doesn't actually give the dates, but it's. See, it just quickly spread across. Then it got very. It never really quite went to having. Didn't control it quite the way that the United States Kingdom did. But I think that's going to happen now in the United States. If you look at what's happening now, and the way it's being controlled, you get these big white gaps forming. So that's February. See, it's gradually getting more. The white gaps are staying white, and this is very unusual because if it was flu, it wouldn't happen like this. And I think it's because with COVID-19, it's because it's a super spreading. It's nearly all super spreading. So you have one person will infect 20 people. They'll all be in a particular community, and then most of the 20 people won't infect anyone. And then one of those maybe, and two of those maybe affect another 20. That may be partly why it clusters so much. But you get this situation where entire regions have 98,000 people in a county, and it's just no cases for 2 weeks. And so I think we're going to end up with, as the vaccines go down, so right now the vaccines are, they're focusing on stopping it from the deaths and hospitalizations, quite rightly, with the vulnerable and the elderly. So it's not, they're not the natural transmitters of it, but they're mostly sheltering anyway. And then the health workers who, again, mostly would take a lot of care in protecting, in stopping transmission. So, but as they go down to the younger populations, the 30s, 40s and so on, then we're going to start seeing an even faster drop-off in the cases. I think we're going to start seeing it go clumpy. So just by analogy with United, why should it be different from happened with the United Kingdom last summer. So I think we're going to end up with a situation, and the United Kingdom is like one state. So probably each state will have a city of perhaps 100,000 people in that state in one hotspot, and the rest is free of COVID. Totally free. Nobody there. Nobody's got COVID except in those hotspots. In that situation, I don't think it's actually going to make sense to keep vaccinating all the 20 years in the 30-year-olds in the entire state, then all the 20-year-olds, and then start doing the children. I think it's going to make sense to do the same as in that time-reaching exercise with the United Kingdom, and to vaccinate the particular regions that have got the hotspots. And we could actually use that strategically right now. If you look at the way it's spread, you get these big hotspots, and then with very high numbers of cases per 100,000 people, the dark red ones. And then some of these are increasing. So when you've got a dark red spot which is also increasing, then if you could vaccinate just those people, you're only talking about maybe 2-3 million people for the worst hotspots. And the thing is that those then spread cases to neighbouring counties. So I think even right now, if we could use the vaccine strategically and still vaccinate everyone, but pump in, do surge vaccinations of the worst metro regions with increasing cases. And I think doing that right now would be a very effective strategy in protecting not just those metro regions, but the other regions around them. So certainly, whether we do that now or we wait until later, I think at some point the strategy is going to switch from trying to vaccinate everyone to vaccinating the worst hotspots and surge vaccinating those. I think we're going to have surge vaccinations. If that is correct, and if that works, then we should end it much faster than if we have to wait until everyone in the United States is vaccinated. Now this is relevant to what I was just talking about how unfair it seems that these countries are starting so much later, and all those countries, by the end of 2021, they should have at least a quarter of their population vaccinated. And they may well, if you take account of the wealthier countries, and if they donate their doses, and for instance, Canada said it's going to donate all its doses, and we know India already does. And so and I think the United Kingdom will surely donate our excess doses once we vaccinated everyone. If only we do it earlier, but we are going to do it. So with all that, then you're going to have maybe 50% vaccinated at those sort of levels. If they also use strategic vaccinations and target hotspots after they first of all vaccinate the 4% and then the 20% maybe as well of the most vulnerable, and then with what's left, surge vaccinate the worst hotspots. I think we're not going to be far from eliminating it. And saying that we should aim for zero COVID has become almost politically incorrect. I don't understand this at all. People say, well, I think I do understand. I think it's a psychological thing. I don't think it's scientific. I think what is happening there is that people wouldn't even think, of course you aim for zero SARS, of course you aim for zero MERS, of course you aim for zero Ebola, of course you aim for zero measles, and for zero smallpox, and zero polio. Every country has a zero strategy for those diseases. But we have just got used to flu, that we don't aim for zero flu, because it's not possible, because it's so transmissible and so mutable. It's very difficult to stop. But COVID is not as mutable as flu, and it's much more easily traced than flu. It's much more like SARS in those respects. So I think the reason for this split, where some people say we can go for zero COVID, that includes like New Zealand, Australia, Taiwan, China, they all say go for zero COVID. And then you've got other countries that say we can't do it. I think it's just whether they're using the analogy of flu or whether they use the analogy of SARS, or whether they're just from their own experience of the case in New Zealand, and they've experienced life without COVID, and they don't want to, and they want to stay like that. So I think it's just one of these political psychological things. Just people are used. I'm not logical either. Nobody's really logical. You have to work very hard if you want to train to be a mathematician like I did. It's not natural. It doesn't come natural to our minds to be very logical, very mathematical in how we think. And then when you do learn to be so logical and mathematical, it's often compartmentalized so you can manage to apply that logic very clearly in particular areas. But then in other areas you're influenced and you're not very logical in your thinking. And it's not necessarily a bad thing that. It helps us to be intuitive. Sometimes logic isn't the only thing that you need in a situation. Sometimes intuition is more important than the logic. And intuition often gets things wrong, but it often gets things right. And sometimes it lets you do a leap to some point that you can get to that you could never have reached with just logic and rather pedestrian reasoning. So, but I think this is a case where the intuition of the flu experts is maybe leading them a little bit astray. That it's the argument by analogy, which is a very intuitive argument. I don't think that's really quite right for COVID. It's the similarities. If you then need to use your logic, once you've got used to this intuition, you need to examine your intuitions with logic. And especially when it's a scientific topic like this, and say, okay, I've jumped to this conclusion, and then is the thing I've intuited, does it stand up to very careful scrutiny? So I think this is very important. If you're very intuitive and you're involved in science, I think it's very important to balance your intuition, not get rid of it. Intuition is very, very valuable. You don't want to discourage people from being intuitive and jumping to conclusions that the data doesn't support, because that's how we make breakthroughs. But once you've done that, use the scientific rigor to scrutinize your intuition and stand it up to various tests and check it against other things. And so I think once you do that, I think you realize that zero COVID is achievable. And it was achievable without a vaccine. It is certainly achievable with this 94% effective vaccine. There's no way you can look at that and say that we can't stop it, seems to me. We could stop it without the vaccine, with something as effective as that. And then this is just a first generation vaccine. And we will have more effective vaccines. And we will have easier to administer vaccines. As we try, I mean, it's probably not the most effective way of using the Pfizer vaccine. They just haven't tested all the different variations of what amount of dose you have and which you have first, and what size the first dose, the second dose, the spacing between the two, and so on. There's no reason to suppose that the particular one they did the phase 3 trial for is optimal even for Pfizer. And then mixing with other vaccines. So I'd be astonished if 94% is the highest it goes in terms of stopping transmission. And it's doing that even with the B.1.1.7 variant. So that shows it's not. And then we can have if we have multiple variants, we can have multiple spikes in the same vaccine. We do that already with flu. We have different strains of vaccine in the same flu shot, so we can do the same for these variants. And as long as we keep the cases down, we can keep the variants well under control. So, my personal view is I think we're going to see zero COVID, and then not only that, I've been saying that all along, but I think this really reinforces it. If any of you have been following me, I've always said we can reach zero COVID. Because the World Health Organization said that originally. They've started, they don't talk about it so much now, but it's become kind of politically incorrect for some reason. But, you know, I think it's pretty obvious we can aim for zero COVID. And then once we get to very low numbers of cases per, get to very low numbers of cases, and for instance, Israel at last has vaccinated its Palestinians. It's not going to be able to achieve zero COVID without vaccinating the Palestinians, clearly, because they're all mixed up in amongst them. But I think that once they've got everyone vaccinated in Israel, and that'll be one of the first countries to achieve that, then Israel, with such an effective result as that, then they may well achieve zero COVID just through the vaccine, even without such a very effective health response. Zero COVID in the sense of no community transmission going on inside Israel, except for imported cases that then start a little outbreak that quickly fizzles away and is gone, just because of the vaccine. And then if we can stop COVID with the vaccine, then that comes to the moonshot, and then the idea, well, we've now learned that we can stop a disease over the entire world in just a year or two. Well, there's several other diseases that would be great to get rid of, that we know we already have effective vaccines for. So the dozen diseases we could just get rid of from the entire world, just like we did for smallpox. And then, of course, we have to monitor. And for instance, people say, "Oh well, but what if COVID jumps back, back again to humans?" And that, of course, is why we need to know very well how it originated. And but if there was a new outbreak of COVID again in the future, started somewhere, if we don't find the original animal reservoir, we'll stop it very, very quickly. So I don't think you need to worry about that. And what's more, if we had a world just a totally new disease like COVID, but not COVID, then I think we are now much better prepared than we were in January 2020 as the world. And if we could take this level of preparedness and somehow put in a time machine, same thought experiment. The time machines aren't real, by the way, in case any of you wonder. They're probably impossible in our universe, and all those fake time travelers on YouTube, you can tell they're not real time travelers because they all say different things about the future, and none of them predict anything that would be kind of very surprising, that only a time traveller would know, and that the time traveller would easily be able to predict. So, but anyway, but in this thought thing, if you imagine that you could go in a time travel back to January, and you could somehow put all our preparedness back there, then again COVID-19 would never have happened. We'd have stopped it as effectively as Taiwan and China did, and we just never have got to this point. But we had to learn, sadly. It just the way that China did a very poor response with SARS originally, and the world, it seemed that some countries, many countries, what the World Health Organization calls muscle memory. Maria Van Kerkhove talks about as muscle memory. So it's almost a bit like we're used to running the sprint and we've got to learn to run a marathon. And it just doesn't happen very easily. If you're used to running a sprint, then it's going to take an awful lot of training before you can start running any marathons. And even if you were physically capable. So it's a little bit like that we're too used to flu pandemics. We weren't well prepared. We didn't, and there were lots of warnings, but governments hadn't listened to them, and populations hadn't listened to them, not quite well enough, although we were much better prepared in 2020 than we would have been if the same thing had happened in 2015, say, or something like that. There's been an awful lot of work on preparedness. We've now got much more preparedness, as with the last 2 years, an extraordinary level of investment in good public health around the world, entire world, including the weaker economies, including, for instance, the way we've got countries here that are now got the countries in sub-Saharan Africa that now have the capability to make their own medical oxygen, for instance. It's really quite basic, but they didn't have that before. Hugely improved health systems, just certain basic things. And then, anyway, I've talked about that before. Sorry, I didn't mean to go on and on like that. So I'll stop this at this point. But I really, there's so much positive. Because I help every day. I'm spending most of my day just helping people who are just scared, terrified, who've been told by various false prophets or by various journalists that the world is getting worse and worse and worse, and people are just not working together and so on. And so, please, that's not true at all. In COVID-19, I see the world working together in such a positive way. And if you look at it positively, and you look at just never done anything like this before, we have never vaccinated the entire world, never offered the vaccine to the entire world in just 1 year. Nothing even remotely like that. We have never worked together with to tackle a threat like this with so much unity, so worldwide. We have just never done anything like that before. We've got the same thing happening with climate change, but here with COVID-19 it was an emergency, it was very sudden. The world found solutions very, very fast, including financial solutions like the $1 trillion money chest of the International Monetary Fund. Many of these countries, their economies would have gone under. Their governments would probably have collapsed if it weren't for financial help from the wealthier countries who realised that this was important for them as well. We came together in absolutely remarkable ways. And then economists showed that they have actually learned how to respond and use effective economic effects. So we would have had a Great Depression if we'd had the economic understanding of the early 20th century. But economics has apparently become very, very precise now, and people know how to respond to economic crises in a way we didn't even know 10 years ago. So that also is part of why it has been so effective, our response. The economy is very important for something like this. It needs to support it, and it's the livelihoods as well as lives. And so we have actually discovered how important the economy is. People who think, oh, dull, boring economics, who cares about economics? I mean, there are many people who have that view. We now realise that economics is actually very important, and it's a science, and it's a very effective science, and it works. So I think that's been another lesson from this. So these very, very, very positive things that coming together and learning, and then the amazing advances with the medical science and with the vaccines and with the tests and the serology testing prevalence and things, and the experts say they've never seen anything even remotely like this before, so fast, the way we've done everything. So please, this is just think about when you start feeling if you get feeling overwhelmed by all this, then just start thinking it's really so positive what's been happening here, really extraordinary. The world has never seen, go back thousands of years, the world has never seen anything like this, in the way it's pulled together and solved a major difficult problem, very, very difficult problem. So, yes, anyway, I'll upload this now. I think this yes, so just usual things. Welcome to my channel. Do sign, do subscribe if you want to see more of these, or like it if you want to try and encourage the channel. And if you get scared about things like this, then I've got a Doomsday Debunk group on Facebook. If you're an expert, then you're very welcome there as well. Or if you've got good at fact checking, you know how to do research, to check things, then just the only thing is, if you join the Doomsday Debunk group on Facebook, do please read the rules at the head of the group. This is how it works. That's how it works. And the rules are very important, especially important because we have many autistic members. They are amongst the most vulnerable to this. These sort of worries. And the autistic people it's an autistic friendly and it's a manic friendly group. So you get people sometimes posting very manic things, and sometimes people posting, and then you have the autistic people, and we just have rules that work for these kinds of people. So it's very important. The rules that work, that make it effective, let it work as an effective group for helping people no matter what situation you're in. And autistic people particularly, they need it to be very rule-based, very clear rules, not just say be nice or something like that. So do please check the rules ahead of the group, just have a look over them, and that helps the group to work, to function properly.